Hi everyone, welcome to the Purpose with Profits exceptional events where we bring experts and entrepreneurs to founders which enable them to grow. Hearing from experts as well as founders' journey enabled them to learn from those who've been through before. Today we have Doug Downer from Franchise Ready, and Doug's known as the franchise guy and it's got superpowers. Thank you so much for joining us, Doug. Today, I'd like to share a little bit about Doug's journey. Franchise Ready has helped support over 60 franchise brands in the past 4 years. In 2021, Franchise Ready was recognized as the best franchise consulting firm in the world, which is pretty impressive. Well done, Doug and the team. Quite simply, they're the best at helping businesses scale up and grow through franchising. Doug himself has owned multiple food businesses and currently owns 4 food businesses. I'm proud to have worked with and helped over 1,000 small business owners in his career. He's also the author of the book, Flipping Out, and all those who are attending today will receive a copy of his book, How Every Business Should Be Franchise Ready. I'd love to introduce Doug. Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for the opportunity. And to those that are joining us live, great to share some time with you. And to those watching this podcast or this recording, I hope you enjoy and get some value out of it. I'm just going to start off by, sharing a short presentation, and then I'll throw back to Bob, and he's got some Q&A, some that have come from yourself. So I've termed, this part of the evening, why every business should be franchise ready. I've lived a life in franchising since 1983. And as Bob said, we've had some success globally in doing what we do. And we're even more proud of is the fact that we've successfully helped launch and support over 60 brands. That's taking business owners that have got an idea or an existing concept, a proof of concept, and helping them scale and grow. We're really proud of the fact that those brands we work with typically have grown by over 200% year on year. So what I wanted to do, and this short presentation, is just talk about what are some of those key elements and why every business should be franchised. In terms of what we do at Franchise Ready, there are 4 key elements. We work with business owners to get their strategy right. We create all the tools and resources they need. We help them launch and go to market using a franchise model, and then provide them that ongoing support so that they grow at a speed quicker than if they were to do it on their own. In terms of the brands that we've worked with, these are some examples. When we started this business, 90% of our clients were in the hospitality and food space. That's shifted in the last 18 months. We're probably now 60% food and 40% non-food. There'll be some brands there that you can see will be familiar to you and some that are not. We tend to work with emerging brands, businesses that have 1, 2, or 3 locations but want to scale and grow. In terms of why we do what we do, it comes back to the success survival rate of businesses. You would have seen all sorts of statistics, but typically independent business survival rate in the first 4 years of operation is as low as 50%. And to me, that's not good enough. And so I know that both Bob and myself and people like us are committed to helping business owners ensure they're not part of that 50% statistic, that they're on the other side of the equation. Now, the reason I focus on franchising is because that's where I've spent most of my life. And we know that the business survival or success rate in franchising over the same period of time is as high as 80%. Now, even though that's 50% better than independent businesses, to me, that's still not good enough. What about that 20% failure rate within franchising? So what we try to do at Franchise Ready and in my team is really set people up for success so they don't make mistakes, it doesn't cost them money, and they're not part of that current 20% failure. It's just not good enough that any business owner, and all of you can relate to this. I currently own 5 businesses. We invest everything into growing our brands, and nobody deserves to have their dreams and their business quashed. So what we try to do is make sure that there's a good plan in place to make sure you've got the best chance of success and you're not a statistic. We have a fundamental belief that every business should be franchise ready. Now, that doesn't mean that every business should franchise. It just means that you need to have the rigor and the discipline that a franchise business has and what it is that makes that franchise business successful. About 2 years ago, I wrote a book on the topic. I've got 12 contributions from very successful franchisors that I know personally, and I've built a little bit of a roadmap. So for those that are joining us tonight, you'll get a copy of this. So Bob will send this to you. And so if you wanted to franchise, there's a bit of a blueprint, a roadmap on how to do it. But what are the key elements? Tonight, I'm going to touch on 6 of those elements, but in the book, it talks about what are those 12 elements that make a business successful and franchisable. What I'd say to everybody is don't fall in love with an idea. So we do a lot of work in helping prospective business owners become franchisees and existing business owners become franchisors. And what's really important is that this is a passion project for you. It's something that you believe in. And I know from the time I've spent, with Bob, how passionate he is about the plant-based sector and championing that. And it's great to have something that you're in love with, but you actually need to make sure that you fall in love with a great business model. And I think that's where some of the questions will come tonight is, how do I take this great passion project that I have, but make it viable so that it can be scalable at the same time, and I can make a true impact through what you're endeavouring to do. So I always caution people, don't fall in love with the idea. People that want to buy a cafe or a restaurant or food because they like food, but don't fall in love with the idea, fall in love with the business model. And that's really one of the key takeaways for tonight. How do you build a successful business so that you can scale and grow? I talked about 12 key elements. Tonight, I want to focus on 6 of those because I think these are the 6 most important ones. So the systems and processes and procedures you have in your business, the values and value that you bring, the people, marketing, finance, and what are the resources that you need. I'll touch quickly on each of those. And as we go into the Q&A section, there'll be an opportunity to maybe dig a little bit deeper. In terms of systems and processes, I hope nobody recoils when I say this, but I started my franchising career working at McDonald's back in 1983. And for whatever people think of McDonald's, there is no system better in the world at documenting a process and building a system that can be replicated. And it's replicated now over 30,000 times in 150 countries. And the average restaurant turns over $5 million a year. And it's essentially run by 16-year-olds. Now, the reason you can do that is because they have really good systems and processes, and that's fundamental to any business. So what I always say when I work with anybody is when everything that we do, if we have to do it more than once, we need to document it. And we need to write a procedure so that somebody else can do when the time comes for us to scale and grow. We need to create an assembly line process so that can be replicated. And the key here is investing in training. I think a lot of people see training as a cost rather than an investment. So McDonald's spent a lot of money, and they got a lot of government funding as well, but they put a lot of funding and investment back into training and training people. 90% of their senior management globally started as simply-faced 15-year-olds. So it just goes to show that you can take anybody off the street and turn them into very, very successful executives. Some of the wealthiest people that I know are McDonald's owner-operators that started when they were 15 years of age. And that's because of the training that they had. And one of the other keys around systems and processes is measure what success looks like. So once you've got a standard, how do you measure that to ensure consistency? And I'm sure that's a question that some of you may have, is if I scale and grow this and give other people the opportunity to take on my passion project, how do I ensure that those standards that I hold close to my heart are maintained by other people? So you've got to have systems for measuring. So if you're going to do something more than once, have a system and a process for how it's done. In terms of values and value, this is integral to growing a business. I'm probably not teaching you anything, but the values are your guiding principles. And I know the audience I'm speaking to tonight has very strong values around plant-based and what that means. And then from a value perspective, it's about what's your value proposition. And again, maybe some questions will come out of this is, with an emerging brand. I know I met Bob some years back when we were both working on a project with IKU, which was a pioneer in the plant-based sector. Ken started that business 25 years ago, well before veganism and plant-based was fashionable. So it's understanding what is the value proposition that you bring. And if you are going to franchise it, what's the value that you bring to the franchise? What does it mean for them? How are you differentiated in the market? That's obviously, it's relatively obvious with plant-based, but how do you compete with non-plant-based and appeal to a broader? It's identifying who your ideal customer is. You'll know who that is, but how do we spread the word further afield? And what's the problem that your business solves? So it's getting to the crux of that. And I know Bob does a lot of work in that space. And how do you position that and communicate that to the market so that people understand it? From a people point of view, believe that no matter what business you're in, if you're interacting with customers, you're in the people business. Whether you sell food or a service, you're in the people business. So I always say to people, if you're not a people person, then don't go into business. So it's a key. Now, there are 3 types of business owners that we've identified. There's an author by the name of John Rillo, wrote a book called Built to Sell. And in his book, he talks about the 3 different types of business. Firstly, the craftsman. I would envisage that most people that are watching tonight start as a craftsman. They have a passion and they want to take their passion to market. The craftsmen often make really good franchisees, but then there's a transition. The second type of business owner that we see is the freedom fighter. Often a freedom fighter is somebody that has been working for somebody else and believes that they can do it better. So they're aspiring for something more, and they also make really good franchisees. And then the third type of business owner is the mountain climber, and often they make really good franchisors. A mountain climber is somebody that likes to build something, that likes to get to the top. But the challenge for a mountain climber is once they get to the top, they look for what's next. So you'll often see that those mountain climbers often move on and start other businesses. They might start one idea and move on to another idea. So when I meet with prospects that we work with, I identify where does somebody sit and how do they transition from being a craftsman into being a freedom fighter. The next essential element is marketing. So I might have this great idea, but if you're the best kept secret in the world, no one's going to know about you and your business is not going to grow. So from a marketing point of view, I think marketing is as simple as finding, keeping and growing the right customer. So being very, very clear about who is your right customer. There's a phrase that I learned a couple of years ago that really helped catapult my business, and that is that your target is not your audience. So your target, for everyone watching tonight may be vegans, but it's actually not your entire audience, but you need to really niche down into who it is you're sending your message to. But the other business, the other clientele will come. So as I said earlier, we started out primarily as a hospitality franchising business, and now nearly half of our business is non-hospitality. Finding is about how you market. Keeping them is the customer retention piece. Growing them is getting them to spend more with you. But it's really knowing who the right customer is for you. From a marketing point of view, you've got to have a strong brand. So have somebody really strong that can help you create your brand and take that brand to market, and then look at how you communicate that brand. And today, marketing is all about digital and social media. I work with a number of brands that have been built on the back of social media. And one I'm going to share with you is a non-plant-based business. They do have plant-based offerings because they recognize that their core customer, wants that product. And that brand's a burger brand called Milky. I started working with that brand when they had 1 restaurant, turning over $2 million. This year will turn over $40 million across 18 restaurants. It's a brand that's been built purely on social media, a $200 a week spend on social media. But what they did was they identified who their core customer was, and it was an 18 to 30-year-old female. And so all of their marketing, all of their communications is in a language that relates and talks to that. I use them as an example, and I go in a lot more detail in the book about how they did that and how you can apply that to your own business. In terms of the finance piece, getting the business model right is the most important thing. I believe that any business can be franchised. It doesn't mean they should, but the key to that is you've got to have a business model that ensures the customer gets a good experience at a good price, the franchisee gets a good return on their capital, and you as the founder and franchisor, if you go down that path, can actually get a good return on your business. So making sure that the business model's right so that everybody profits is critically important. So we do some extensive financial modeling for both franchisees and franchisors. It's all about return on investment, and that's investment in capital, but also investment in your time. And what's the typical payback? The clients that we work with, we like to see a payback in under 2 years. Where in food and hospitality, the average payback is 2 to 3 years. So our clients typically are getting a payback between 1 and 2 years, and we tweak their model to enable them to do that. We believe that every business should have a budget. I know Bob's really strong on the financials, given his strong accounting and financial background, and understanding your cash flow and what that means. And the biggest challenge I see for business owners is being undercapitalized. So albeit I say everyone should be franchise ready, not everyone should franchise until you're at a point where you've actually got the cash flow and the funds to do it properly. Otherwise, you'll spend money and lose. It's really important in business is to understand what your break even is. What do you need to do to pay your bills and to start profit? So for me, as I say in the book, there are 12 elements, but I've hit on what I believe are the 6 most critical of those elements. And in order for us to take a business forward to franchise, We need to make sure that all of those boxes are ticked before we would take that concept to market. So that's the quick version of the book. I'm excited that I get to share that book with you, and hopefully you got something from that presentation, but we can dig deeper in some of the specific questions that you may have in the remaining time that we've got together.
Join us for part 2 of the interview with Doug Downer.